conference we had for the afternoon in Low Library across the way. And our keynote speaker, Amin Nasser. Small change in schedule, but we're very grateful to you for traveling so far to be with us and participate in this keynote conversation with Dan Yergin here this morning. As we heard yesterday, the energy sector is in the midst of some rather transformational and historic shifts, including one of the steepest oil price collapses we've seen in history, OPEC trying to reassert itself, questions about its ability to do that now with shale reemerging and starting to grow again. And no company in the world is more central to the global energy markets than Saudi Aramco, which has been a key player in the global energy markets for 80 years, a key player in so many critical functions of the kingdom, even beyond energy. Saudi Aramco is the world's leading integrated energy and chemical company, the world's largest supplier of crude oil, plays a central role in the implementation of Saudi's ambitious Vision 2030, including a much scrutinized IPO that many here, I'm sure, are paying close attention to. And so Mr. Amin Nasser is the president and CEO of Saudi Aramco. We're delighted to have the opportunity to welcome him back to Columbia University this morning. I think he last visited with us in June, along with His Excellency Khalid Al-Faleh. He's been with Aramco for 3 decades in numerous senior leadership roles, including the SVP of Upstream. He's on the board of trustees or the advisory boards of numerous institutions, including many institutions of higher learning. And I know through our many interactions how much he values the role that great research universities like Columbia play. So I'm delighted that he has traveled all the way from the kingdom to be with us today. I want to thank Mr. Nasser. I also want to, of course, thank Dr. Daniel Yergin. If you need me to introduce Dan, you probably have walked into the wrong room this morning. Founder of CIRA, winner of the Pulitzer Prize for the prize, currently the vice chair of IHS Markit, and most importantly for all of us at Columbia, one of the most involved members of our advisory board at the Center on Global Energy Policy. He's been a friend and mentor to me personally and to Columbia for many years now. It's been, we're really fortunate to have Dan in our corner and being as active and involved as he has been. So this morning, Dan and Amin Nasser are going to have a conversation. Before that gets started, let me just remind people of the ground rules. Please silence your cell phones. If you want to have a side conversation, please step outside. I don't suspect anyone will want to do that, given who is on stage. This event is being webcast live. Both the full video and the podcast recording will be available online, also through our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, your preferred podcast provider. And then for the Q&A portion of the event, we have index cards on all the chairs. If you have questions, please write those on the cards. We'll have people collecting them, and we'll pass them to our moderator, Dan Yergin. So I don't want to take time away. I know our time is brief, and there is much to discuss and many subjects today. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again, Jason, for the introduction. Let me begin by complimenting Columbia School of International and Public Affairs for inviting me to participate in this session, which is encouraging constructive debate about energy market policies, economics, and the environment. I'm delighted to share my views in this public session, and I will keep my remarks brief so that we have ample time for the Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, given the history of the oil market, it is no surprise that we have seen continuing volatility since the current downturn began in 2014. A lot has been written about present market and its future direction, but I would like to caution against drawing too many conclusions about the long term based on the short term conditions we are seeing, and let me elaborate. Prices continue to respond to the weekly changes in drilling rig and production levels in the US, sporadic bumps in inventories, interest rate changes by the Fed, movement in the dollar exchange rate, financial activity in the future markets, the shapes of forward curves, and a range of analysis reported by various entities. And yes, I deliberately left fundamentals out of this list. These factors have legitimate influence, especially on the short-term market, and contribute significant information to price formation. But they also complicate the picture by obscuring or drowning out the all-important longer-term phenomena driven by fundamentals. That matters because the oil business is long-term in nature. Some projects, such as shale oil, can be developed relatively quickly, but many more projects require up to a decade to complete, especially if you start by leasing land, securing government clearances, and undertaking exploration. So many things may have changed between the initial investment decision and when a major project is done. That is why we are continuing to see projects still coming on stream that were funded some time ago when oil prices were much stronger. Looking at another critical angle, if we examine the supplies needed in the coming year, we must meet not only demand growth but also make up the natural decline of legacy fields. That means infill drilling, bringing developed fields into production, and new discoveries over the longer term. To underscore the magnitude of future capacity required, a constructive figure for demand growth and natural decline to be offset over the next 5 years stand at some 20 million barrels per day. That is a lot of production capacity, and the investment we now see coming back, which are mostly smaller and shorter term, are not going to be enough to get us there. But that's not where things end. Between 2014 and this year, about $1 trillion in oil and gas investments were either deferred or canceled. $800 billion in development and $200 billion in exploration. That equates to between 5 and 10 million barrels per day of oil supply, which otherwise would have materialized. Yet another troubling factor in the equation involves exploration. The volume of conventional oil discovered around the world over the past 4 years is half of what have been discovered over the previous 4-year period. The point I want to make is that while the short-term market points to a surplus of oil, the supply required in coming years are falling behind. Also, I think it would be imprudent to assume that major oil producers will simply make the massive investment needed to bridge all these gaps, particularly since most long-term projects continue to be on hold, even after the recent price recovery. That impending shortfall has a time lag, though, and its effect will be felt over a period of time whose duration is difficult to estimate. So in my view, the future market situation will be increasingly on firmer grounds, though volatility could continue until the rebalancing take firmer hold and inventory withdrawal assume a more consistent trend. It is this confidence in the future that drives Saudi Aramco's adherence to our long-term strategy, which I will briefly outline next. As many of you know, the Kingdom's Vision 2030 calls for diversifying the national economy. But it also emphasized that further development of Saudi Arabia's 3 existing pillars, industries, oil and gas, chemicals, and minerals, in which vast potential remains unexplored and untouched. So we are continuing to invest and strengthen our core oil and gas business across the value chain. Of course, a robust crude oil program remains at the heart of the existing pillar industries. At the same time, gas production will double to 23 billion standard cubic feet per day over the next decade, which will increase the cleaner gas in our energy mix for the utility sector to about 70%, which is the highest compared to the G20 group. Downstream, we are continuing to build a world-class business portfolio to better balance our upstream oil business. Accordingly, Saudi Aramco's global refining and marketing capacity will be increased to between 8 and 10 million barrels per day. As part of this effort, we will build on our Motiva business here in the US once the transaction is completed between Shell and Aramco. This will give us greater autonomy and flexibility to implement our future plan for the world's largest oil and downstream market. In the fast-growing Asian market, we recently reached an agreement with Petronas of Malaysia to participate in a large refining and petrochemicals complex being built with a capacity of 300,000 barrels per day and about 7.7 million metric ton of chemicals per annum. We're also discussing several other refining and marketing joint venture with high-growth countries in Southeast Asia, like Indonesia. Similarly, we are creating a world-class chemical business that will also enhance the profitability of our refining asset through integration of petrochemicals. As part of this strategy, we have established a joint venture with the German specialty chemicals company Lanxess, a world leader in synthetic rubber and its application, and we have made a substantial investment in green chemistry by acquiring Converge, a CO2-based polyol business, enhancing our downstream expansion strategy. Another of our important chemical strategy is to develop groundbreaking technology to directly convert crude into chemicals. This will considerably improve the comparative economics of oil feedstock and substantially expand oil share in the petrochemical feedstock mix. And we are also working to grow the role of various petrochemical materials across a wide range of applications. In summary, the increase in U.S. drilling rig levels and relatively growth in the shale production combined with the occasional bounce in inventories continue to put downward pressure on oil markets. But these are not a good indication of where the market is likely to be headed going forward, as the large new production capacity and investment we will need in the future are lagging and in fact missing in many cases. In light of this, Saudi Aramco continues to invest in its oil and oil-based businesses across the value chain. And while there may be legitimate differences of opinion over the timing of broader market improvements, there can be little or no doubt that the future direction of the market is upward. Thank you, and looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Amin. You talked about volatility in the marketplace. How do you make long-term investment decisions with volatility? It seems Saudi Aramco quite different from other large companies whose spending has very much been affected by what's happened with prices. It's like you look at the world differently.
Our investment is always based on the long term. We have been through these cycles of more supply, less demand, and more demand and less supply so many times through the history of the company. So we have a long history when we went through these cycles, and everything that we do is based on the long-term plan and our look of the industry and what's going to happen in the oil and gas market. That's why our investment continue. You will find out our capital program in 2015 and 2016 was the highest in the history of the company. So we continued to put investment to grow our sector in the years where oil prices were also going down, because we found it's always going to be a good opportunity for us to grow in these sectors. Volatility, as highlighted, it is what we are seeing currently is short-term volatility. There is upticks every time the inventory grow. Mainly the inventory, what we have seen in the US, anytime there is more imports, the inventory will grow, or more production coming from the shale oil. So you'll see the inventory growing a little bit, the prices is impacted. However, as I said, that volatility is only going to be in the interim. There are a lot of indicators, as highlighted. There is more demand that we are seeing. We have seen it last year, this year, and based on the prediction from IEA and EIA in 2018, there is also healthy demand. So lack of investment that we have seen, almost $1 trillion. So there will be, and add to that the decline, the 20 million over a 5-year period, 5% almost decline of our current production. So there will be a need for additional production over the mid to long term, and we are preparing for that.
So how do you see, well, let me put it this way. Long cycle and short cycle, I think this is kind of a new concept that's really emerged over the last year or so. Between long cycle is what you do, or mega projects, and short cycle is shale preeminently. Is this a new concept that you have to think about when you think about the market?
For us, we always look, as I said, a long-term cycle. A short-term cycle is very helpful for certain companies, mainly because all what you need to increase the production is in two ways. Either the unconventional oil, which you can bring a lot good capital and you increase the production quickly. However, the decline is going to be high. In unconventional, the decline in the first year is almost 50%. So you have to put more and more investment every year. You can also, for a short cycle, look at infill drilling, where you have the facility. All you have to do is to put infill drilling. But with infill drilling, you are also accelerating the decline. What the company is looking is always, we find out that to optimize our cost over the long term, we need to look at the long-term cycle. And this is what is helping us today. That's why our cost per barrel is the lowest globally, because we always invested based on the long term. Bringing a mega project means our plateau is longer and our decline is much slower, which means you don't need, after you go with the initial investment, you don't need a lot of maintained potential going forward. Short cycle, it means you have to put an investment, you're looking at it a year on year and putting a huge investment every year. And there's a difference. As I said, we have went through this experience. We have seen the impact of what we are doing in our cost per barrel today, which is, as I said, is the lowest in the industry. And what helped us...
Can you mention what the number is? Or do you want? Or just low? Low, okay.
Let's say it's low.
Low. So long term, for Saudi Aramco, how long is long?
You know, we talk about decades. Anytime we bring in increments, we look at our increments in decades. We will not build the facilities based on a 10-year decline rate. If you look at our plans, when we bring an investment, it's always built based on staying at full capacity for decades. Right. And this is how you will monetize that investment over a number of decades.
So if you take Shaba, that is a long-term project. And as I understand, you did it in phases partly because you knew you had to wait for the technology to catch up?
The technology to catch up started early on. You see, this is a discovery early on. And we left it for more than 20 to 30 years without development, because if you drill the wells, when we discovered Chabad, the well would have produced less than 1,000 barrels per day, which the technology at that time was vertical wells. We waited until the mid-90s. The technology developed. Horizontal and multilaterals became the new game. It allowed us to produce each well at 5,000 barrels by putting what you call it a fishbone, or multilaterals with smart completions, so we can control each of the laterals. And we brought the production to 5,000 barrels, so the cost per barrel went significantly lower. Now, we started with 500. Then, yes, we brought another 250,000 barrels of increment, and we brought another 250,000 of another increment to bring it to 1 million barrels today. But why did we do that? Why didn't we bring 1 million barrels from day one? The only reason we started at 500,000, we want to see the reservoir performance. Reservoir performance is a strength in the company. You wanted to see what is the sweep conformance, sweep efficiency, what is the impact, because this is have huge gas cap in the top. We wanted to make sure we produce it the most efficient way and managing our costs and placement of wells. Which part of the reservoir you need to, because they have different, when you look at the properties of the Sheba is a big field. It differs from one area to another, which area to concentrate on. So we looked at all of that. We put it through our simulation models, took time. We looked at the reservoir performance. We fed our models. And then we decided it is safe to go with 750. And then we found out when the performance continued to improve, we went with the 1 million barrel.
And that was over how long a period of time?
98, and the last increment we put it last year. So we started 98 to 2016.
So that's long term. So if we're talking about long term, another idea, of course, that has become much discussed in the last year and a half is this notion of peak demand. If you're thinking long term, that's very important to you. What is your thinking on this debate or discussion about peak demand?
Our belief that peak demand is not inside. We believe that the hydrocarbon and oil in particular will be part of the energy mix for decades to come. And for a number of reasons. As I said, demand is growing, and we have seen it for the last 2 years, and we continue to see it growing in the years ahead. Yes, renewables is getting into the market, and it is growing, and it is getting gradually getting part of the energy mix. But if you look at the renewable, it is today what we call the new renewables, which is solar and wind. It's about 4 to 5%. If you look at the electricity sector, the renewable is about 23%. So significant part is still utilizing coal and liquid. If you look at countries today, in China and India, still you're looking at from 60% to 80% on coal. Even in the US, I think 1/3 is still on coal. If you look at Germany, almost 40% is still in the utility sector on coal. So yes, there is a growth in the renewable sector. If you look at the hydrocarbon, where is the hydrocarbon goes? 55% go to the transport sector, light vehicle transport sector, and 45%, 30% is in heavy-duty vehicles, aviation and shipping, 15% into petrochemical, bitumen, and loops. So the impact of the electric vehicles on the 55% on the light vehicles sector. But if you look at the number of electric vehicles today in the market, it's about 1.2 million out of a fleet of about 1.2 billion. And that is with a lot of support and incentive from developed nations in terms of encouraging electric vehicle sector. If you look at the EIA forecast, by 2040, there will be 150 electric vehicles. But the number of vehicles will grow from 1.2 billion to 2 billion by 2040. So even if you assume 50%, it's not 150 million, which is 8%, assume 1 billion that will go into electric vehicle by that time, which will be difficult because you need the infrastructure and you need the technology to develop, and you need to phase out all these conventional vehicles, which is going to be, there will be gains in developed nations and OECD countries. But in developing countries where the growth is, it will be difficult. So we still believe that a significant amount of hydrocarbon will be in the transport sector, and it is growing. The petrochemical sector is growing also at almost 3% per year, and there is more opportunity for growth in that area. So again, I say it's not in sight. The hydrocarbon will be there for decades.
Right. So the IPO is, of course, much on the agenda. There are also a lot of constraints about ability to talk about it at this stage. To the degree you can you say something about what the status is and how the company is preparing for it?
Under the publicity guidelines for sharing information, specifics about the IPO will be difficult.
Well, let me put it this way. Is there going to be an IPO?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
He's on the record.
That much I can say. Preparation for the IPO is on track. Everything is going very well, and we are the teams that are currently working on it in terms of our financial support, in terms of investment bank that is currently helping us, and independent financial advisors, and all of that going very well. Everything is on track, and nothing changed from what we have said.
Okay. Thank you on that. For the future, a couple of questions here. Questions, are you going to pivot to Asia, pivot to China as your markets, or how do you see your markets developing?
If you look at our export, it is diversified. In terms of, for example, if you look at export, almost, I would say, 60 to 70% of our export goes to Asia, and it is a growth market for us. That's why you will see in the downstream sector, we have a huge investment in Korea with our S-Oil refinery. We have an investment in China, and we're looking at opportunities in China for investment in the downstream sectors. We just signed an agreement in Malaysia for 300,000 and 7.7 million ton per annum of petrochemicals with Petronas. We are working very closely with Pertamina in Indonesia, and a JV in Cilacap, which is a refinery that we are hoping will take it to 400,000 barrels per day. We're looking at additional opportunities also in Indonesia. Asia is a growth area. There is more demand. We see it year on year. We have an investment also in Japan. And we are looking at other opportunities for growth in Asia. But at the same time, we are looking at other enclaves. We have an investment in the US. We are looking at opportunities for growth. It is an important market in the downstream side to grow our investment here. And we're looking at opportunities. As I said, in refining, we have a participated capacity of 5.4 million barrels per day. We are looking to grow it to 8 to 10 million barrels per day. In the petrochemical sector, we have 12 million ton per annum today. We have huge investment of JVs in Saudi Arabia with Dow Chemical, Sadara, we call it. Huge investment, over $20 billion. We have one investment with Sumitomo. Also, we did phase one. We are doing phase two. Should be started part of it last year, and the second part will be finished this year. It's more than $20 billion between the two phases, phase one and phase two. We have a 50% agreement with JV with Lanxess, and created a company called Arlenxio, also in synthetic rubber. So petrochemical is the growth area, but we are looking at an opportunity globally.
So at 5.4 million barrels a day, you're already the largest refiner in the world. And 8 to 10 million barrels a day, basically you would match your crude production with your refining capacity.
Yeah, and that will be good, you know.
That's the intention. Okay. It's called integration, I believe. Yes. Given the long time frame of Saudi Aramco and the nature of your endowment, what's distinctive about how you manage technology?
I think technology is very important, critical for the success of Saudi Aramco. And we have seen the value of technology in our cost per barrel, cost per million BTU, cost of product. Without technology, we would not have been, in terms of our cost structure, where we are today. Our investment is everything that we do is about technology. If you look, if you visited our headquarters in Dhahran, you've seen what is the impact of technology. Sheba, you highlighted Sheba. Sheba is all about multilaterals, smart completions. You can control the production from each of the laterals. Fiber optics. We geosteer drill bits from our headquarters in Dhahran. For that, you need fiber optic going from downhole all the way to the surface. You need satellites to bring the data live to the Dhahran area. So when they you can geosteer the bits. Why do you need to geosteer the bits from Dhahran? Because in Dhahran you can run your models, you can optimize, you can have less number of geologists and petroleum engineers to look at everything. They can look at offset wells, they can run their models, and they can geosteer the bits in the right direction live. So all of this investment we have seen over the years since the company started benefit us by putting the right technology. It is, when you look at it early on, it's higher investment, more capital, more cost per well. But if you look at over the life of the wells, over the life of the production, you will find out you will end up making a lot of rate of return because of that investment early on. So because of our long-term plans, we see the value of putting a huge investment in technology. That's why in this cycle, what did we do? We have 8 centers and offices globally, technology centers.
So these are around the world.
In the US, we have 3. One in Detroit, one in Boston, and one in Houston. We have in China, we have in Korea, we have in Netherlands, we have in Aberdeen. We do have so many centers globally, in addition to the centers that we have in Dhahran. And in this cycle, what did we do? We have a huge center in Dhahran for technology. We just started the center, a huge center in Dhahran, another one. And we are building another one in KAUST, in King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in the Western region. So we are building 2 centers now because we are finding the value of technology and technology investment in this down cycle. And we will continue to invest in technology.
So what value, I mean, Detroit or Massachusetts, what do you get by having them there that you wouldn't have?
Our investment in technology is an open innovation models. You know, we leverage our capabilities in the kingdom, our scientists and professionals, with the talents that are available globally. So we look at each region and what is the added value to have an investment in that region and what it would add. Detroit is where it's a hub for auto industry. Right. So when climate change is an important strategy for us to look at how can we reduce our carbon footprint. And we are working with the auto industry. So we have one center in France to work with the auto industry in Europe with IFP in France, and one in Detroit to work with the auto industry in the US. So it was important to put these centers in these locations. And there is a lot of talent there. And the idea is to work with the auto industry to build engines that will have less carbon emission and better fuel formulation and more efficient.
So in terms of investment, I want to ask you about your investment in people. We're in a great university. What do you do in terms of training now with your people, both in the kingdom and sending them abroad to study?
You know, talent and talent development is very important for the company, and we have invested a lot in developing our talents. We start in a normal year, we take approximately 4,000 to 5,000 high school graduates, and we put them through our training programs in the company. That is runs between 2 to 3 years. We prepare them to run our plant. These are the apprentices, the operator, the technician that run our plants. And we have been successful in doing that, and every year we do that much. But for our professionals, today we have approximately 2,000 professionals globally in the best universities studying in their BS and Master and PhD degrees. And we put them in different disciplines for them to come back to Saudi Aramco. This is other than what we hire fresh from the markets. We hire a lot of professionals every year. But we also, in certain area where we need certain disciplines for professionals, that's why we have 2,000 today. And we continue, even in this down cycle, none of our programs, actually, if anything, it's expanded. Even in this cycle, where prices went as low as $26 almost in January or February of 2016, we continue to invest because talent is important. You cannot be successful as a company if you do not have the right talent and the right investment on them, and it's always pay out, over the long term to invest in these talents.
So Saudi Aramco is a member of the OGCI, which is the association of primarily European and other companies addressing oil and gas climate initiative. What are you all doing in terms of low carbon technologies?
Glad you mentioned the oil and gas climate initiatives. This is a group of 10 companies that working together to reduce the emissions, carbon emissions, and identify technologies and research that will help to reduce the emissions. And recently we have announced $1 billion investment vehicles for that purpose between us. Each company contribute about $100 million. Now, this is done through OGCI, but at the same time, each company is doing their own program to mitigate carbon emissions. I mentioned shifting to gas in the utility sector. We are expanding our gas portfolio to have cleaner gas in the utility sector, and as I said, it will reach almost 70%. And that is our goal. And that's the highest. If you look at the G20 group, that will be the highest. At the same time, we have a lot of investment in carbon capture, sequestration, and utilization. We have it in the kingdom, and we have it through working with academia and technology institutes and our partners globally. We are looking at technologies. I mentioned one about converting CO2 to useful products. It's a technology that we have invested in, and we are also scaling it up in the kingdom. In terms of flaring, we are the lowest, one of the lowest, and even according to the World Bank, if you look at our ranking as a kingdom in terms of flared gas, mainly because of our flare recovery system that we have installed in different plants. So we are doing in too many fronts to mitigate and reduce the carbon emissions. One of it, as I say, technology, working with auto industry to identify better fuel formulation to reduce emissions. Carbon capture, not only from fixed sources, also from mobile sources, is an area of interest for us, and we're putting a lot of investment in that technology. So we are working with OGCI. At the same time, we have our own program to mitigate carbon emission. This is something important and critical and strategic for the company.
Is there any technologies you're particularly excited about now?
Well, too many that I'm excited about, but capturing CO2 from mobile sources from cars is something that is important and critical. We have managed to capture up to 25%. We're looking up to capture more than that, and then finding ways to get rid of it when you capture it. Turning CO2 to useful product is something that is important and critical. It can be commercial. CO2, you can turn it to useful product, and you can make a good rate of return on it. So this is an area of interest, high interest for us. Another area of very excited about is crude to chemical. That is an area that we are very excited. If technology managed to do it at a very high percentage, we're looking at now up to 50%, but if you can do it up to 80 or 90% turning crude to chemical, and looking at the industry that is utilizing chemicals, for example, steel pipes. There's nothing wrong with all steel pipes to be carbon or fiber type.
Right.
And that will also improve the utilization of chemicals in the rest of the industry.
So do you feel that carbon capture, use, and storage, until recently, has sort of fallen off the table and has just come back into the discussion?
I think it is important, and I think companies and industries are looking at ways to optimize the cost when you look at carbon capture and sequestration. And I think it is of interest to a lot of companies. They are looking at ways how they can. The issue around carbon capture and sequestration is finding the right storage area where you can store it without it being leaking to other zones.
So Vision 2030, the IPO is part of that. How will Vision 2030 change Saudi Arabia?
I think Vision 2030 is a roadmap, ambitious but achievable roadmap for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It sets a lot of expectations, goals to diversify the economy and make sure that it does not totally depend on oil. The other sectors, the private sectors and other sectors will contribute. The country, we have a lot of resources, not necessarily only hydrocarbons, but they are not, these opportunities are not leveraged 100% or utilized 100%. So Vision 2030 is about creating the opportunities. The kingdom location, at the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds, the kingdom location also between three continents. When you look at it, it's an investment powerhouse, a lot of opportunities. So resources, not necessarily in hydrocarbon, even in minerals and other sectors, even in tourism, there's a lot of opportunities in the kingdom. If you look at Vision 2030, it set a lot of goals to increase the contribution of the private sector. Privatization is important, essential as part of Vision 2030. Privatization starting with Saudi Aramco, but other sectors you will find out it will be privatized to increase efficiency and performance. And the contribution of the private sector to GDP will increase from 40 to 65%. The small and medium enterprises contribution also will increase from 20 to 35%. Unemployment will, as part of the target under Vision 2030, to drop from 11.6 or 11.8 to 7%. There is a lot of contribution, women in the workforce increasing from 22 to 30%. So it's all creating a lot of opportunities, growth area, e-commerce, reducing bureaucracy, facilitating business opportunities for all these sectors to come to the kingdom and establish bases for them to work. So there is a lot, as I said, a lot of expectation, a lot of goals, a lot of work that is currently ongoing, and we see a lot of bright future as part of Vision 2030.
So a big part of Vision 2030 is diversification of the economy, job creation. So what's Saudi Aramco's role there beyond generating revenues?
Well, Aramco can go through the full value chain and create a lot of industries in the kingdom. Petrochemical, for example. We can go through the full value chain. Instead of sending our commodities, we can create industrial parks, utilize these commodities, and go to finished products. So you can create a lot of industries in the kingdom. And that is, Saudi Aramco can do a lot in these things. For example, localization. As part of Vision 2030 is for the oil and gas sector to have 75% of the products generated in the kingdom.
So probably very low right now.
Yeah, we are in the approximately 35 to 40%, and to take it to 75% by 2030. The company goal is to reach 70% by 2021, end of 2021. But so we are hoping to meet the requirement early on in terms of that. But that will generate a lot of jobs in the kingdom. And we are working with our partners to establish JVs in the kingdom, because that will increase our reliability. What we are doing by bringing these industries into the kingdom and creating a lot of industries in the kingdom and creating jobs, it will help us as a company, because our reliability will be always depending on these sectors to flourish in the kingdom commercially. And that is very important, because if you look at the region, there's a lot of growth in the region, in the Gulf region. So that sector being there and not only contributing to the kingdom, but exporting a good amount of the product that will come from these industries to the region around us will help that sector to grow. So the company is playing a major role in that. It will also have an impact, as I said, on our reliability. Having all of these industries in the kingdom, having the spare parts, the manufactured goods available at site, it's different than what we are doing today. Today, we have a huge inventory. And the reason we have a huge inventory in billions of dollars, mainly because the sectors that we are getting a lot of our supplies and spare parts and equipment is not within close reach. So we have to do a lot of imports that will take time. So you need to store to have it available. When these sectors flourish around you, you don't need to have any storage facilities, huge storage facilities and huge inventory. That is not necessarily a good idea, because these sectors are available, working commercially, and they can generate services and goods for the company, and they can export to the region.
So this really changes your supply chains.
Completely, because, as I said, you will be getting a lot of these services from close proximity.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground. You have a big agenda, big responsibilities. We thank you for coming to join us, and we wish you well and your colleagues well and what's ahead for you all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Jason.
No, I just want to thank all of you for coming, especially you, Amin. Thank you for traveling so far to be with us today. Thanks, Dan, for moderating this conversation. So much more to discuss, and wish we had much more time, but hopefully you'll come back and join us again in New York soon. And of course, there's so much for us to continue to research at the Center on Global Energy Policy, at CEPA, and across Columbia, which is what we do every day on issues of foreign policy and technology and global economic governance, and of course, energy policy and geopolitics and the environment. So we'll continue to do that work, and hopefully you'll all engage with us, continue to come to our events, follow all our events online. We appreciate your taking the time to be with us to close out our 2017 annual Global Energy Summit here at Columbia. We look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.